Hello everyone, I'm Mara, and this is day 2 of starting the Spirit Brush Academy. Today we will be focusing on continuing writing out the rest of the first part of the poetry for the first book, for the big calligraphy piece. And since we already have some ink ground, I think we will actually be able to do some of the calligraphy work today. So I'll see you when I get there. Have you ever felt that there are simply some things that you can experience, but they can't be expressed in words? I have as well, and for me, one of these things that I wish to be able to share that I can't really explain is what it feels to do calligraphy, specifically meditative calligraphy. What makes meditative calligraphy the way that it is how each part of the process is approached. There is a deliberate desire to reach a sense of stillness and a deliberate desire to bring one's attention to the present moment, connecting the way that they think to the way that they are acting, and also experiencing the opposite, so that the way that they are acting then influences the way that they think. So in meditative calligraphy, the practice is composed of preparing various strokes in a specific stroke order in order to achieve a certain aesthetic appeal. And in this aesthetic, there are various things that can be perceived through training one's awareness and expanding the way that you are able to perceive the general field of how various influences affects the quality of your inner experience. So these strokes, when done correctly, can include the calligrapher's energy or vital life force, otherwise known as chi, and it can be applied and transferred towards the paper that the calligrapher chooses to write on. The way that this is done is through training one's inner intent or expanded awareness. So this notion is something that is not really common in the Western way of thinking. However, where it originates from in Chinese culture The word is called E, and this word it can be explained in various ways, such as a willpower, a concentration of willpower. Um, it can be explained as a meaning towards something in the same way that a person will do something different when it is meaningful to them. It can also be described as the intent to do something. So, say for instance, when I am just moving my hand, I am simply intending to move my hand. There's not really a logical train of thought on how I deliberately move each part of my body in order to simply move my hand. So these movements are governed by, again, the E, and every movement can have those qualities behind it. It can have meaning, it can have a concentration of will behind the meaning, and it can be intentional. So when a calligrapher practices meditative calligraphy, they are using their intent and their own understanding of the way life works and what they've collected through their own experiences and bringing it towards the brush as the calligrapher's mind becomes more aware of each aspect of the brush. More of their intent is filled with meaning behind the movements that they will then participate in. In the practice of using one's E to move intentionally, naturally the life forces or the vital energy called Qi tends to move towards where Yi is pointed, similar to the way that yin and yang interact with each other. It is actually through the observation of the various layers of yin and yang that the qualities of Yi and Qi began to be observed in Chinese culture. So when the calligrapher uses their Yi to bring the totality of their awareness towards the brush, it is then filled with intent. The quality of a person determines what intent will be provided, because whether we know it or not, a lot of our actions, if not all of it, are driven by a motivation. And these motivations are determined by the deep characteristics that we have, or that we are born with, or that we develop throughout our life. These deep characteristics that can't be hidden. And so as the intent moves towards the brush and then touches upon the ink, the Qi begins to fill the ink. And through intent, the Yi gathers the Qi from the ink towards the brush. And then again, through intent, the calligrapher carefully applies the Qi onto the paper. So most often, when practicing techniques like this for the first time, or even as one becomes more proficient in its practice, the Qi is almost always going to be more overwhelming than a person can really understand. It's kind of like being hit by a wave in the ocean when at first it was calm and still, and then suddenly waves start hitting you. Maybe the first wave won't be too much. It might not be as difficult to overcome, but if the waves kept hitting, eventually, for the most part, an average person will start responding in panic and anxiety. So the practice of meditative calligraphy cultivates the E as well, so that we have the willpower to be able to sustain a specific state of mind regardless of our external circumstances. In this ability to cultivate this state of mind, there is a neutrality or an equanimity that can be perceived in the quality that the yi interacts with the qi inside of the ink. So, putting everything in a bit of a nutshell after such an expanded explanation of what the spirit brush intent is, the goal of each spirit brush piece is to first cultivate deep awareness within oneself, so that we can become able to perceive things beyond normal perception. And in this way, we can then bring new perception, new perspectives into our current state of reality. And one of the ways that I've found for myself to be most inspiring in delivering this new perspective is through the practice of spirited poetry, which I do believe is pretty much the same as Zen poetry, except it leaves it up to more of an open-ended practice of inner reflection through perhaps different direction or directives compared to what Zen poetry might explore. I am not practiced in Zen poetry. However, I have practiced Buddhist principles for over a decade in my life, and I do aspire to understand the nature of consciousness and the mind and the truth behind reality. So in the form of spirited poetry, the goal is to then use various vantage points from the places that I've visited in my consciousness and see where another individual might be able to see what they might be able to glean upon from standing upon those various vantage points. And in this way, they'll be able to see something new from a place that I thought I saw something, and then together growth can occur. So spirited poetry begins on expanding awareness, and then it continues upon cultivating oneself through that expanded awareness. And then within this state of expansive awareness, new forms of perspectives can be gained as one's own energy begins to be more nourished. It is similar to having a certain type of resource available to you that then allows you to achieve new things. But in spirited poetry, it is the goal to be able to take such a difficult to explain experience with such multidimensional facets of its perception, and to be able to distill it into sequences of symbols in the form of words, in order to then encapsulate and distill the specific energy, interaction, and exchange that is meant to occur when reviewing from that vantage point. So every time we have a form of energy, or let me rephrase this, consider a time when you have said something in anger, and then consider a time when you have said something in sincerity. Regardless of the words that we would say, it is simply the energy behind it that actually then allows the other person to feel what we might want them to feel. So through the cultivation of energy and awareness, it is then possible to bring specifically the energetic signature of the intent and transfer it into a series of words that can then be considered as poetry. So in spirited poetry, each line can be studied upon on its own, perhaps, and then when connected with the rest of the lines, it can then inspire a various and deeper state of understanding. And when experienced as a whole, the motivation behind doing all of this is to then empower and allow people to recognize their innate and inborn strengths and inspire them to master those innate and inborn strengths rather than constantly trying to deny. So I have finished preparing more ink, quite a bit more. For whatever reason, this time around, it didn't feel nearly as tiring as the first time. So perhaps it's spring. And I have written the first poem of the book. So this poem is a distillation of something that I wrote about a year or two ago when I was thinking about if I was to leave something behind and I was a renowned thinker, what would I be able to gift to the world as the last thing? What would I be able to compile and distill through the experiences of my life that I can then share with the world to inspire hope and peace in their heart? Walk gently through the waves of repeated thinking in my heart. I know I can become clear, and through clarity I can learn. Actions rise even if there is no choice. So I try to protect the environment of my mind. This way my mind is clear and free from judgment. What does it mean to you when you hear these words? Have you given yourself enough grace to walk gently as your heart races and your mind wanders? Are you aware that you can become aware? Have you ever noticed that no matter how hard you try, sometimes things just happen on their own? The mystery of how, even without choosing, when it's necessary, an action will occur. What is it like inside of the environment of your mind when you close your eyes? What do you see and what do you feel? Would you like to know what it's like to be free from judgment? Would you like to know what it's like to be clear? So this is the big piece of calligraphy. slowly see, it is a pre-folded piece of paper that I prepared quite some time ago. Originally, the book was around 352 characters, or 285 characters, sorry. That was a different number. So I prepared that many squares. But since then, since the initial preparation of this piece, I have changed the book. So we will see if this many squares still works for me. We shall see. It looks like here. Here is where my squares start. So one of my first challenges is going to be figuring out how to even get this piece of paper on the table. I know I've been told by I know I've seen in other videos of master calligraphers that they normally do their work on the floor. However, I can't really I might have to do it on the floor.
Something that I can do.
So this is what we were able to get finished for today. Just a little look at what we have left to do and where we're going from. So that's it for today. It was good to have you here with me, and I hope you enjoyed some of the reflections and things that I had to share. See you next time.